$57. That was exactly how much money Maya had in her bank account when she walked into her shift that rainy Tuesday. By the time she walked out, she had $0, no job, and a soaking wet coat. She thought she had just ruined her life by helping a homeless man who collapsed in her section. She didn't know that the homeless man was Anthony Sterling, the ruthlessly private owner of the Sterling Empire, worth $40 billion. And she certainly didn't know that his greedy nephew was watching from a black SUV across the street, planning to destroy anyone who got in his way. What happens when the poorest woman in the city saves the richest man on earth? You won't believe the revenge he takes on the people who mistreated her. The rain in Seattle doesn't just wash things clean. Sometimes it feels like it's trying to drown the city. For Maya Linwood, the relentless downpour pounding against the cracked windows of Joe's all-night diner sounded like a countdown. Drip, drip, drip. Maya adjusted her apron, wincing as the rough fabric rubbed against the bruise on her hip, a souvenir from rushing to catch the bus that morning. She checked her watch. 7:15 p.m. 5 hours left. Maya! Table 4 is waving their empty mugs around like they're trying to flag down a rescue chopper. Move it! The voice boomed from the kitchen window. It was Rick, the manager. Rick was a man who sweated grease and bled anxiety. He treated the diner not like a failing establishment on 4th Avenue, but like a Michelin star restaurant under siege. "Coming, Rick," Maya called back, grabbing the coffee pot. She hurried over to table 4, where 2 men in expensive suits sat looking out of place. They were likely lawyers from the firm down the street, slumming it because the rain was too heavy to walk to the Italian place 3 blocks over. "Top off?" Maya asked, forcing a smile. One of the men didn't even look up from his phone. "About time, and bring the check. This place smells like old fry oil." Maya poured the coffee with a steady hand, despite the insult. "I'll grab that for you right away, sir." As she walked away, she heard the other man snicker. "Look at her shoes, Julian. Duct tape. I told you this place was a dump." Maya felt the heat rise to her cheeks. She looked down at her sneakers. The left sole was indeed held together by a strip of silver tape. She had meant to color it with a black marker so it wouldn't be noticeable, but she'd been too busy making sure her little sister, Lily, took her dialysis meds before school. Lily. The thought of her sister was the only thing that kept Maya from throwing the coffee pot at the wall. Lily was 19, brilliant, and dying. The kidney failure came out of nowhere 6 months ago. The medical bills from Seattle Grace Hospital were a mountain that grew taller every day. Maya was working double shifts here and cleaning offices on the weekends, but it was like trying to empty the ocean with a spoon. The bell above the diner door jingled violently as a gust of wind blew it open. The atmosphere in the diner shifted instantly. The customers, mostly tired locals and the 2 suits, looked up. Standing in the doorway was a figure that looked like he had been dredged up from the bottom of the Puget Sound. He was an older man, perhaps in his 70s, with a thick, matted grey beard and a heavy, soiled army jacket that dripped muddy water onto the linoleum floor. He was shivering so hard his teeth chattered audibly. "Hey!" Rick shouted from the back, wiping his hands on a rag. "No loitering. Kitchen's for paying customers only. Beat it, Pops." The old man swayed. He looked pale, his skin having a greyish, clammy tint under the harsh fluorescent lights. He took a shaky step forward, clutching his chest. "Please," the man rasped, his voice sounding like grinding stones. "Just a glass of water, just to take my pill." "Water costs money if you ain't buying food," Rick sneered, stepping out from behind the counter. He was a large man, imposing. "We aren't a shelter. Out." The two men in suits at table 4 watched with amusement. The one named Julian, a man with slicked-back blonde hair and eyes like a shark, laughed. "Go on, Rick. Toss him out before he infects the food." Maya froze. She looked at the old man. He wasn't just cold, he was in distress. His eyes were wide and unfocused. "Rick, he's sick," Maya said, her voice trembling slightly. "Look at him." "I don't care if he's the Pope," Rick snapped. "He smells like a sewer." "Maya, get back to your tables. If you serve him, it's coming out of your tips." Maya looked at her tips jar. She had made $12 so far tonight. She looked at the old man again. He stumbled, catching himself on the edge of the counter. "Do it!" her conscience screamed. Maya grabbed a clean glass, filled it with ice water, and grabbed a warm blueberry muffin from the display case. The last one. "Here," she said softly, guiding the old man to a booth in the back corner, away from the other customers. "Sit down, please." "Maya!" Rick roared. "I said no!" "Take it out of my pay," Maya shot back, surprising herself. She set the water and muffin down. Sir, are you okay?" The old man's hands were shaking so violently he couldn't hold the glass. Maya gently lifted it to his lips. He drank greedily, some water spilling into his beard. Then, with trembling fingers, he pulled a small, battered tin from his pocket, popped a nitro pill, and placed it under his tongue. He closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the cracked red vinyl of the booth. "Thank you," he whispered after a long moment. He opened his eyes. They were a piercing, startling shade of blue, intelligent, sharp, and totally at odds with his ragged appearance. "You didn't have to do that, miss." "My name is Maya," she said, lowering her voice so Rick wouldn't hear. "And yes, I did. You're soaking wet. Do you have a place to go tonight?" The man looked at her, studying her face, as if memorizing it. I am currently between accommodations." "Here," Maya said. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out her tips, the $12. It was supposed to be her grocery money for the week. She shoved it into the old man's hand. "It's not much, but there's a hostel on 2nd and Pike. This might get you a bed." The man looked at the crumpled bills. His hand closed over them slowly. "You are giving me your money? You have tape on your shoes, Maya." Maya smiled sadly. "Shoes don't keep you warm at night. Go there after you eat the muffin, before the manager calls the cops." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the diner. "Oops," said the man named Julian. He had deliberately knocked his coffee mug off the table. It shattered into a dozen pieces. "Waitress!" Julian barked, snapping his fingers. "Clean this up, and get this bum out of my line of sight. I'm trying to eat a steak here." Maya stood up, her fists clenched. She looked at the kind, shivering old man, then at the arrogant Julian Thorpe. She didn't know it yet, but the man in the dirty coat was Anthony Sterling, the owner of the very building Julian was sitting in. And Julian Thorpe was his nephew, the man currently trying to declare Anthony legally dead to take over the company. But right now, all Maya saw was a bully. "I'll clean it up," Maya said tightly. She grabbed a rag and knelt near Julian's table. As she wiped the floor, Julian leaned down, whispering so only she could hear. "You're pathetic. Wasting your time on trash like that. You belong in the gutter with him." He kicked her hand, not hard enough to break bone, but hard enough to bruise. Maya gasped and pulled her hand back. That was the moment the old man stood up. The old man didn't stand up like a frail vagrant. He stood up with a sudden, rigid posture that commanded attention. The air in the diner seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You," the old man said. His voice wasn't raspy anymore. It was low, thunderous baritone. He pointed a shaking, dirty finger at Julian. Apologize to her." Julian blinked, then burst out laughing. He looked around the diner, seeking an audience. "Did you hear that? The trash is speaking. You want me to apologize to the help?" "She is not the help," the old man said, stepping out of the booth. He moved with a strange determination, though his legs were clearly weak. "She is the only person in this room with a soul. Apologize. Now." Rick came storming out of the kitchen, wielding a spatula like a weapon. "Okay, that's it. Party's over. Pops, get out before I throw you out physically." Anthony, though no one knew his name yet, ignored Rick completely. He kept his blue eyes locked on Julian. Julian stood up, towering over the old man. Julian was 35, fit from hours at an executive gym, and radiated aggression. "Sit down, old man, before you break a hip." He reached out and shoved Anthony in the chest. It wasn't a hard shove, but Anthony was in the middle of a cardiac event. He stumbled back, his legs hitting the booth seat, and he collapsed to the floor, clutching his left arm. "Oh my God!" Maya screamed. She dropped her rag and sprinted to him. "Sir! Sir!" She fell to her knees beside him. Anthony was gasping for air, his face turning a terrifying shade of purple. "He's having a heart attack!" Maya yelled, looking up at the frozen room. "Call 911! Somebody call 911! Julian looked down at the man he had just shoved, a flicker of worry crossing his face. Not for the man, but for a potential lawsuit. Then he scoffed. "He's faking it, trying to get a settlement." "Call them!" Maya screamed with such ferocity that the other customers scrambled for their phones. Maya ripped open the Velcro of the old man's dirty jacket. She placed her ear to his chest. His heart was beating erratically, like a bird trapped in a cage. "Stay with me," Maya whispered, grabbing his cold hand. "Please stay with me. The ambulance is coming." Anthony's eyes fluttered open. He looked at Maya, his vision blurring. All he could see was her worried face, framed by the harsh diner lights like a halo. He squeezed her hand weakly. "Not faking," he wheezed. "I know," she cried. "I know, just breathe." The sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Rick stood over them, looking furious. "Great. Just great. This is going to kill the dinner rush. Maya, you caused this. You let him in." "He's dying, Rick," Maya sobbed. "I don't care. You're fired," Rick shouted, his face red. "Get your stuff and get out. Once the paramedics take this garbage away, I don't want to see you here again." Maya didn't even look at Rick. She held Anthony's hand until the paramedics burst through the door with a stretcher. They swarmed the old man, hooking him up to monitors, shouting medical jargon. As they lifted him onto the stretcher, one of the paramedics asked, "Does he have any family? Identification?" Maya shook her head. I don't know. He just came in for water." The paramedic nodded and rushed Anthony out into the rain. The ambulance doors slammed shut and the lights flashed against the wet pavement before speeding away toward Seattle Grace. Maya was left kneeling on the dirty floor, her hands shaking. "Did you hear me?" Rick's voice cut through the silence. "You're done. Hand over your apron." Maya slowly stood up. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, crushing reality. She looked at Julian, who was calmly finishing his steak. He didn't even look up. She untied her apron, let it drop to the floor, and grabbed her coat. She walked out into the rain without a word. The walk to the bus stop was miserable. The rain soaked through her thin coat in seconds. She had no job. She had given away her last $12. She had to go home to Lily and tell her that they might be evicted next month. Maya sat on the bench, putting her head in her hands, and wept. 3 days later, the beep of the heart monitor was steady. Anthony Sterling opened his eyes. He was in a private suite at Seattle Grace, the VIP wing. The sheets were Egyptian cotton, The air smelled of expensive sanitizer and fresh lilies. He tried to sit up, but a firm hand pushed him back gently. "Easy, Anthony. You had a massive myocardial infarction. You're lucky to be alive." Anthony turned his head. Sitting in the leather armchair next to his bed was his personal attorney and oldest friend, Benjamin Croft. "Ben," Anthony croaked. "How long?" 3 days in a coma," Ben said, closing a file folder. "The doctors say if you hadn't taken that nitro pill and received immediate hydration right before the attack, your heart would have stopped completely before the ambulance arrived. Someone stabilized you." Anthony stared at the ceiling. The memories came flooding back. The cold rain, the cruel manager, the arrogant laughter of his nephew, Julian, and the girl with the tape on her shoes. "Maya," Anthony whispered. "Who?" Ben asked. "The waitress," Anthony said, his voice gaining strength. The anger was returning, fueling him. "She saved me, Ben. She gave me her last $1. She lost her job because of me." "I see," Ben said, taking notes. "Do you want me to send her a check? 5,000? 10? Anthony slowly turned to look at Ben. His blue eyes were like ice. "A check?" Anthony let out a dry, humorless laugh. "No, Ben, you don't understand. I went undercover to see how my businesses were being run, to see who deserved to inherit my empire. I found rot, I found cruelty, and I found one diamond in the sewer." Anthony struggled to sit up, ignoring the pain in his chest. "Julian was there," Anthony said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "He shoved me. He laughed while I was dying. Does he know I'm here?" Ben shook his head. "No. You were admitted as a John Doe. I only found you because of the tracking chip in your watch. The staff has been sworn to secrecy. As far as Julian knows, the homeless man probably died in the ER." "Good," Anthony said. A plan was forming in his mind, a plan as ruthless as the business deals that had made him a billionaire. "Keep me dead, Ben. At least for a little while." "Anthony, what are you planning?" Ben asked nervously. "I'm going to rewrite my will," Anthony said. "But first, I need you to find that girl. Find Maya Linwood, and bring her to the Sterling estate, but don't tell her who I am. Tell her she's been hired as a maid." "A maid?" Ben looked confused. "Why?" Anthony lay back, a small, secretive smile playing on his lips. "Because, Ben, before I give her the world, I need to teach her how to rule it, and I need to make sure she survives what's coming. Julian is going to come for anyone connected to my estate. I need to keep her close." Anthony looked out the window at the Seattle skyline, a skyline he practically owned. "Go find her, Ben. The game begins now." 4 days after being fired, Maya sat at her small, wobbly kitchen table, staring at an eviction notice. The bright red stamp, "Final Warning," seemed to pulse like a migraine. Her apartment, a basement unit in a rundown complex that always smelled faintly of mildew, was freezing. The landlord controlled the heat, and apparently he didn't believe in it in October. In the next room, she heard the rhythmic whoosh click of Lily's home dialysis machine. Lily had been too tired to go to school today. "Maya," Lily called out weakly. "Is it cold in here, or is it just me?" Maya choked back a sob, forcing a cheerful tone. "It's just the building, sweetie. I'll bring you another blanket." Maya grabbed the comforter off her own bed and wrapped it around her shivering sister. Lily looked so small, her skin pale and translucent. "Did you get paid from the cleaning job yet?" Lily asked, her eyes shadowed. "Tomorrow," Maya lied. She hadn't been paid because the cleaning agency had ghosted her. She had 75 cents to her name. Maya went back to the kitchen, despair clawing at her throat. She was going to have to take Lily to a shelter. How would they plug in the machine at a shelter? Knock. Knock. Maya jumped. It was 8 p.m. It was probably the landlord coming for the rent. She opened the door a crack, ready to beg for more time. But it wasn't the landlord. Standing in the dimly lit hallway was a man in a charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than Maya's car. He carried a leather briefcase and had a stern, professional demeanour. "Miss Maya Linwood?" "Yes?" Maya said warily. "My name is Benjamin Croft. May I come in? I have a business proposition for you." Maya hesitated. He didn't look dangerous, just intensely corporate. "I don't have any money for whatever you're selling." "I'm not selling anything, Miss Linwood. I'm hiring." Maya let him in. He seemed to fill the tiny, shabby living room. He glanced around, taking in the peeling paint and the cold air, but his expression remained neutral. He sat at the wobbly table and opened his briefcase. "I represent a very private, very wealthy individual here in Seattle. They are in immediate need of a live-in staff member for their estate. General housekeeping, some light assistance." "Why me?" Maya asked, suspicious. "I've only ever worked in diners and office buildings." "My client values discretion and character above a resume," Ben said smoothly. He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a contract. "The position pays $35 an hour, room and board included, full medical benefits, effective immediately, for you and any dependents." Maya stared at the number. $35 an hour. Medical benefits. It would save Lily's life. "What's the catch?" Maya whispered. "Two catches," Ben said. "First, total confidentiality. You sign an NDA that is ironclad. You talk about the client or what you see in the house to anyone. Press, family, friends, and you will be sued into oblivion. Second, you start tonight. Pack a bag." "Tonight? But my sister." "Bring her," Ben said. "The estate has a guest wing. She will be comfortable there." It sounded too good to be true. It sounded like the setup to a horror movie. But then she heard Lily cough in the other room, a deep, rattling cough that shook the thin walls. Maya grabbed the pen. "Where do I sign?" 2 hours later, Maya and a bewildered Lily were in the back of a black Lincoln Town car, watching the city lights fade behind them. They drove north, past the suburbs, into an area where the driveways were a mile long and hidden by massive iron gates. The car turned into a private road, marked Sterling Estate. Private Drive. Maya gasped as the mansion came into view. It was immense, a sprawling Gothic stone structure illuminated by floodlights, looking like something out of a brutal fairy tale. It was beautiful, but cold. "Welcome to Sterling Manor," Ben said from the front seat. They were ushered inside by a stern, unsmiling head housekeeper named Mrs. Higgins, who looked at Maya's worn-out duffel bag with distaste. "You will wear the uniform at all times," Mrs. Higgins snapped, handing Maya a grey dress and white apron. "No personal calls during work hours. The East Wing is strictly forbidden. If I catch you past the library doors, you will be terminated immediately. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mum," Maya said, feeling overwhelmed. They were shown to a room on the ground floor. It was bigger than Maya's entire apartment, with 2 soft beds and its own bathroom. Lily immediately crawled into one of the beds, looking relieved. "It's like a hotel, Maya," Lily whispered. "It's better than a hotel, Lil. It's safety." Maya didn't sleep that night. The silence of the massive house was heavy. She felt watched. 4 floors above her, in a sealed-off medical suite in the forbidden East Wing, Anthony Sterling watched a bank of monitors. One screen showed Maya sitting on the edge of her bed, alert and anxious. Anthony was sitting up in bed, color returning to his cheeks. He pressed an intercom button connected to Ben's earpiece downstairs. "She's here," Anthony said, his voice raspy but satisfied. "She is, Anthony," Ben replied softly. "Are you sure about this? She's terrified." "Good," Anthony said. "Terror keeps you sharp. Tomorrow, we see if she can handle pressure. And Ben, make sure Julian knows I'm unavailable. Let my hungry nephew come sniffing around." Anthony leaned back, watching the small, brave woman on the screen. Let the games begin. The Sterling Empire headquarters was a glass monolith in downtown Seattle, a testament to Anthony Sterling's dominance. On the top floor, in an office bigger than most houses, Julian Thorpe was throwing a tantrum. "What do you mean you can't access the Cayman's accounts?" Julian shouted, slamming his fist onto the mahogany desk. The trembling accountant adjusted his glasses. "Sir, Mr. Sterling has dual authentication protocols on everything. We need his biometrics or his personal keycode fob. Without proof of death or power of attorney, the banks are stonewalling us." Julian raked a hand through his slick blonde hair. It had been a week since the old fool disappeared. Julian had checked every hospital, every morgue under Anthony's name. Nothing. The logical conclusion was that Anthony had gone off on one of his eccentric vision quests and died in a ditch somewhere without ID. "He's dead," Julian hissed. "I know he is. I saw him." He stopped himself. He couldn't admit he saw Anthony having a heart attack and left him. "I feel it." He needed the will. He knew Anthony kept a hard copy in his home library safe, just in case digital files were compromised. Julian needed to see if the old man had followed through on his threats to cut Julian out. "Get out," Julian told the accountant. "I'm going to the mansion." 40 minutes later, Julian's red Ferrari roared up the driveway of the Sterling estate. He hated this house. It was too quiet, too old-fashioned, just like his uncle. He used his biometric thumbprint to bypass the front door security. He still had family access for now. Inside, the house was silent. He stalked toward the immense library. Meanwhile, Maya was inside the library, balancing on a rolling ladder, dusting the topmost shelves. Mrs. Higgins had given her this impossible task, seemingly designed to make her fail. Maya's arms ached. She was exhausted. The house was creepy. She constantly felt like she was being observed. She heard the heavy oak doors slam open beneath her. She froze on the ladder, peering down over the railing. A man strode in, radiating entitlement. He didn't look like he belonged in the quiet library. He looked like he belonged in a boxing ring or a boardroom fight. It was him. Maya's breath hitched in her throat, the blonde hair, the cruel set of the jaw. It was the man from the diner, the man who knocked over his coffee on purpose, the man who shoved the old homeless guy and laughed while he died. Julian didn't think anyone was in the room. He went straight to a large portrait of Anthony Sterling hanging over the fireplace. He grabbed the frame and swung it open, revealing a wall safe. Maya watched, terrified to move, terrified to breathe. She was witnessing a burglary. Julian punched in a code. The safe beeped twice. Incorrect error. "Damn it, Anthony!" Julian cursed loudly, kicking the fireplace hearth. "You senile old bat! You changed the code!" He spun around in frustration and looked up. He saw Maya on the ladder. "You!" Julian snapped. "Get down here!" Maya slowly climbed down the ladder, her heart hammering against her ribs. She kept her head down, praying he wouldn't recognize her from the diner. The uniform was baggy, and her hair was pulled tight in a bun, a stark contrast to her wet hair and apron from that night. She stood before him, trembling. Julian looked at her with pure disgust. He didn't see a person. He saw furniture that moved. He didn't recognize the waitress he had abused a week ago. She was beneath his notice. "You're the new maid Ben hired," Julian sneered, looking her up and down. Pathetic. He's hiring gutter trash now. Maya bit her lip, saying nothing. Have you seen my uncle? Julian demanded, stepping closer, invading her personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne and aggression. Has the old man been here? Has he called? No, sir, Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. I've never met Mr. Sterling. Don't lie to me. Julian grabbed her chin roughly, forcing her to look at him. His shark-like eyes bore into hers. If you're hiding him, if you know where that wrinkled old corpse is, you tell me now. I run this show soon. You want to keep this cushy job. You work for me. Maya was shaking uncontrollably. The memory of the dying old man in the diner flashed in her mind. This monster was responsible. I don't know anything, she managed to say, pulling her chin away. Julian stared at her for another second, then shoved her backward. She stumbled, catching herself on a desk. Useless, Julian spat, just like the rest of them. Get out of my sight. If I see you lurking around when I'm here, I'll have you thrown out on the street before you can steal the silverware. He turned his back on her, returning his attention to the stubborn safe. Maya fled the library, her heart breaking. She ran to her room and locked the door, collapsing onto her bed. She was trapped in a house with a psychopath who was looking for the man he might have killed. And upstairs, hidden in the shadows of the East Wing, Anthony Sterling slammed his fist on the armrest of his chair as he watched the monitor. Did you see that, Ben? Anthony snarled into the air. He put his hands on her, again. Ben Croft's voice came over the intercom. I saw Anthony. Julian is getting desperate. He's going to get worse, Anthony said, his blue eyes cold with fury. It's time to turn up the heat. Tomorrow, we give Maya the keys to the kingdom, and we see if Julian tries to kill her for them. The following Tuesday brought the crisis Maya had been dreading. It started with a phone call while she was polishing silver in the dining hall. It was the private school nurse. Ben had enrolled Lily in a top-tier academy as part of the employment package. Miss Linwood, it's Lily. She collapsed in the hallway. Her blood pressure plummeted. The ambulance is taking her to Seattle Grace right now. Maya dropped the silver platter. It clanged loudly against the floor, the sound echoing through the empty mansion. I have to go, she gasped to Mrs. Higgins. Go, Mrs. Higgins said, her stern face softening for the first time. Take the staff car. Mr. Croft left the keys. Maya drove like a maniac. When she arrived at the ER, the scene was chaotic. Doctors were swarming around Lily. She's stabilizing, the doctor told Maya in the waiting room an hour later, looking grim. But her kidneys are shutting down faster than we anticipated. She needs a transplant, Maya. Not in a year. Not in a month. Now. We have a potential match in the registry, but the surgery is considered elective by your temporary insurance until the probationary period is over in 30 days. The deposit required to book the ER and the surgeon is $50,000 up front. $50,000. Maya felt the room spin. But Mr. Croft said we had full medical coverage. There's a waiting period for major surgery, the doctor said apologetically. Without the deposit by tomorrow morning, we lose the donor kidney to the next person on the list. Maya walked out of the hospital, vomiting into a trash can from the stress. She called Ben Croft. It went to voicemail. She called the estate line. No answer. She was alone. She had less than 24 hours to find $50,000, or her sister would lose her chance at life. As she stood in the dark hospital parking lot, weeping in the rain, a black SUV rolled up beside her. The window rolled down. It was Julian Thorpe. He wore a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Rough night, Maya? Maya wiped her eyes, stepping back. Leave me alone. I hear things, Julian said, opening the door and stepping out. He leaned against the car, lighting a cigarette. I have friends on the hospital board. I know about your sister. Sad thing. 19, right? What do you want? Maya hissed. I want to help, Julian said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He fanned it out. It was cash, stacks of hundreds. There's 10,000 here. I can wire the other 40,000 to the hospital in 5 minutes. Maya stared at the money. It was salvation. It was Lily's life in his hands. What do I have to do? She asked, her voice trembling. Julian smiled, a predator sensing a kill. Simple. You work at the house. You have access to keys. My uncle has a private study in the East Wing. Ben Croft has it locked down. I need you to open it for me tonight. I need to find a specific document. A blue folder. You let me in, I get the folder, you get the kidney. It was betrayal. It was a crime. Anthony Sterling, whoever he was, had given her a home. Ben had given her a job. But Lily was dying. Tonight? Maya whispered. Midnight, Julian said. I'll be at the service entrance. Do we have a deal? Maya looked at the money. She looked at the hospital windows where her sister lay. She thought about the kind old homeless man who had stood up for her in the diner. She thought about integrity. She took a deep breath. No, Maya said firmly. Julian's smile vanished. Excuse me? No, Maya repeated, louder this time. I won't steal for you. I won't betray Mr. Croft. Keep your blood money. You stupid girl, Julian snarled, stepping forward. You're killing your sister. You know that, right? You're murdering her for a job. I'd rather beg on the street than take money from a monster like you, Maya spat. She turned around and walked away, her legs shaking so hard she could barely stand. She expected him to grab her. But he just laughed, a cruel, echoing sound. Have it your way. Enjoy the funeral. Maya drove back to the estate in a daze. She had passed the test of morality, but at what cost? She went straight to the library, intending to beg Ben Croft for a loan to sign away her life's wages for the next 20 years. She entered the library, soaking wet, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Croft, she called out, please, I need help. The library was empty, but the phone on the desk rang. Maya picked it up. Hello? Come to the East Wing, Maya, a voice said. It wasn't Ben. It was deep, resonant, and vaguely familiar. Take the elevator to the 4th floor. Code 7734. Who is this? The man who owes you a muffin. Maya dropped the phone. Maya stood in the elevator, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. The man who owes you a muffin. It couldn't be. The elevator doors slid open on the 4th floor. It wasn't a hallway, it was a penthouse suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the stormy Seattle skyline. The room was filled with medical equipment, monitors, and plush furniture. Sitting in a high-backed leather chair by the fireplace, wearing a silk robe and looking clean, groomed, and powerful, was the homeless man from the diner. Anthony Sterling. Maya gasped, covering her mouth. You're alive. Anthony smiled, though his face looked tired. Thanks to you, Maya. Come in. Sit down. Ben Croft was standing by the window. He nodded to Maya with a look of profound respect. I don't understand, Maya stammered, walking into the room. You own this house? You're Anthony Sterling, but the diner, the shoes. A test, Anthony said, gesturing for her to sit. I needed to see the world from the bottom, to know who deserved to be at the top. I found a lot of ugliness, Maya. And I found you. Anthony leaned forward. I watched the security feed from the parking lot, Maya. I saw what you did tonight. You turned down $50,000 to save your sister. because you wouldn't betray a man you've never met. Maya's eyes filled with fresh tears. My sister, Mr. Sterling, she's going to die. I have to find the money. I don't care about tests. It's already done, Anthony interrupted gently. Maya froze. What? Ben wired the funds to the hospital 10 minutes ago, Anthony said softly. The surgery is scheduled for 6 a.m. The donor kidney has been secured. Lily is going to be fine. Maya let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She collapsed into the chair, burying her face in her hands. The relief was physically painful. Thank you. Oh my God, thank you. Do not thank me, Anthony said firmly. You saved my life first. This is merely a down payment on my debt to you. He waited for her to compose herself. When she looked up, her eyes were red but clear. Now, Anthony said, his voice hardening into steel. We have work to do. Julian thinks I am dead. He thinks he can bully you, buy you, and steal my company. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., the board of directors is meeting to vote on a motion to declare me incapacitated and install Julian as CEO. Anthony stood up. He was still weak, using a cane, but he looked like a titan. I cannot walk into that boardroom yet, Maya. My heart is still recovering. If I go in there and collapse, Julian wins anyway. He'll argue I'm unfit. So what do we do? Maya asked. Anthony picked up a thick document from the table. This is a power of attorney. It grants the holder absolute control over my vote, my shares, and my company until I rescind it. It makes the holder the most powerful person in Seattle. He slid the document toward Maya. Maya stared at it. You want me? You are the only person who didn't want my money, Anthony said. You are the only one who stood up to Julian when he was threatening you. I don't need a businessman, Maya. I have plenty of those. I need a warrior. And you are a warrior. But I'm a waitress, Maya whispered. I don't know anything about boardrooms. I will be in your ear, Anthony said, tapping a small earpiece on the table. Ben will be by your side. But you have to be the face. You have to walk into that room, look Julian in the eye, and tell him his reign is over. Anthony looked at her, his blue eyes burning. He treated you like trash. He laughed at the poor. Tomorrow, you are going to show him who really runs this city. Will you do it? Maya thought about Julian's smirk. She thought of the duct tape comment. She thought of him kicking her hand. And she thought of him leaving his own uncle to die on a dirty diner floor. She reached out and took the pen. I'll do it, she said. Anthony grinned, a dangerous, predatory grin. Excellent. Ben, call the stylists. Get the tailors here immediately. We have 12 hours to turn Cinderella into a queen. The next morning, 8:55 a.m., the Sterling Tower boardroom was a shark tank. 12 men and women in expensive suits sat around a massive glass table. At the head sat Julian Thorpe. Julian checked his watch. Let's get this over with. My uncle has been missing for 2 weeks. The police have no leads. The company needs leadership. I move to assume the role of interim CEO, effective immediately. Seconded, said a man to his right, one of Julian's cronies. All in favor? Julian asked, raising his hand, a triumphant smirk on his face. The heavy double doors of the boardroom boom open. Heads turned. Julian froze. Walking into the room was not Anthony Sterling. It was a woman. She wore a tailored navy blue power suit that fit her perfectly. Her hair was sleek and professional. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor with a rhythm of war. It was Maya, but not the Maya from the diner. She radiated confidence, though inside she was terrified. Who are you? Julian stood up, confused. You're the maid. Maya stopped at the opposite end of the table. She placed a leather portfolio on the glass. "Sit down, Julian," Maya said, her voice clear and steady. "This is a closed meeting," Julian shouted. "Security!" "Security works for me now," Maya said calmly. She slid the document down the table. "As of midnight last night, Anthony Sterling has appointed a proxy to manage his affairs. I am the acting chairwoman of Sterling Industries." The room erupted in gasps. Julian turned pale, then red. "That's a lie!" Julian screamed. "She's a waitress. She's a fraud. My uncle is dead." Maya touched her ear. She heard Anthony's voice from the penthouse, calm and guiding. "Tell him to look at the signature, Maya. Tell him to look at the date." "The signature is verified," Maya said, staring Julian down. "And unlike you, Julian, I didn't leave him to die on the floor of Joe's diner." The room went deadly silent. "Now," Maya said, pulling out the chair at the head of the table, opposite Julian, "we have some changes to make, starting with your employment." The silence in the boardroom of Sterling Industries was heavy enough to crush a man, and right now it was crushing Julian Thorpe. "You're fired," Maya said. The words hung in the air, simple and devastating. Julian let out a strangled laugh. He looked around at the board members, his face twisting into a mask of incredulity. "You're listening to this? This is a joke. She's a waitress. She served me coffee a week ago. She probably forged that signature." "The signature was notarized by Benjamin Croft, who is standing right outside," Maya replied, her voice steady. She could hear Anthony breathing in her earpiece. "He's going to lunge, Maya. Be ready," Anthony warned gently. "I don't care about Ben," Julian roared, slamming his hands on the table. "My uncle is dead. I am the heir. I am the blood relative. You are nobody." Julian pointed a shaking finger at the board members. "If you side with this peasant, I will sue every single one of you. I will burn this company to the ground before I let a maid run it." Maya stood up slowly. She wasn't intimidated anymore. She looked at Julian and saw him for what he was. A small, scared boy in a suit. "You keep talking about your uncle," Maya said, walking around the table. "You keep talking about how much you deserve this company. But you don't care about Anthony Sterling. You never did." "I loved him," Julian lied, his eyes darting around. "Is that so?" Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out a USB drive. She plugged it into the presentation laptop connected to the massive screen behind her. "What is this?" Julian sneered. "Anthony Sterling didn't just survive the heart attack, Julian," Maya said, her voice dropping to a whisper that echoed in the room. "He bought the diner, and he bought the security footage." Julian went white. Maya hit the spacebar. On the giant 8K screen, the grainy footage of Joe's diner played. Everyone watched in stunned silence. They saw the homeless man shivering. They saw Maya give him her food and money. And then they saw Julian. They saw Julian mock the old man. They saw Julian kick Maya's hand. And then the gasp went through the room as they saw Julian shove the old man. "Sit down, old man, before you break a hip." Julian's voice from the video was clear. They watched Anthony collapse. They watched Julian laugh. They watched him sit back down to eat his steak while Maya screamed for help. "You didn't just leave him," Maya said, turning to face Julian, whose back was against the wall now. "You triggered the attack, and then you sat there and hoped he would die so you could inherit this room." The board members were on their feet. Disgust was written on every face. "Murderer," one of the directors whispered. "It's out of context," Julian screamed, sweat pouring down his face. "He was a bum. I didn't know it was him. It's a trick." "It doesn't matter who he was," Maya said coldishly. "You treat people like trash because you think you're above them." That is why you will never run this company." "You can't do this!" Julian lunged toward her, his face purple with rage. "Give me that drive!" The doors swung open again. "She doesn't have to do anything, Julian." The voice stopped Julian in his tracks. He froze, his eyes widening in horror. He slowly turned toward the door. Anthony Sterling walked in. He was leaning on a cane, and Ben Croft was beside him. But he looked very much alive. He wore a tuxedo, looking every inch the billionaire he was. "Uncle," Julian whispered, his voice trembling. I thought—" "You thought I was dead," Anthony said, limping closer. The sound of his cane hitting the marble floor was the only sound in the room. Clack, clack, clack. Anthony stopped inches from Julian's face. The height difference was negligible, but Anthony seemed to tower over him. "I was dead for a few minutes," Anthony said, "but that peasant brought me back, while you ate your steak." "Uncle, please," Julian began to sob, reaching out. "I didn't know. I was stressed. I can explain." Anthony slapped Julian's hand away. "You are done, Julian. You are removed from the board. You are removed from the will. And Ben has already called the police. Assault, negligence, and attempted embezzlement from the accounts last night." 2 security guards, men Julian had employed for years, stepped forward. They didn't look at Julian with respect anymore. They grabbed his arms. "Get your hands off me!" Julian shrieked as they dragged him towards the door. "This is my company. I am a Sterling. You can't do this to me!" "You aren't a Sterling," Anthony called out as Julian was hauled into the hallway. "Not anymore." The doors closed, silencing Julian's screams. Anthony sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. The adrenaline was fading. Ben was instantly at his side with a chair. "Are you all right, sir?" Maya asked, rushing to him. Anthony looked up at her and smiled. It was the same warm smile from the diner, the one he gave her when she offered him the muffin. "I am now, Maya," Anthony said. He looked at the stunned board members. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the deception, but it was necessary to cut out the cancer in this family." He took Maya's hand and raised it. "I am officially stepping down as CEO to focus on my health," Anthony announced. "Effective immediately, the Sterling Foundation and all its charitable assets will be managed by Maya Linwood, and she will hold a permanent seat on this board as my proxy." The board members, realizing which way the wind was blowing, broke into applause. Maya stood there, the waitress with the duct-taped shoes, holding the hand of the billionaire. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She had won. 1 year later. The rain in Seattle was still heavy, but inside the new Linwood Sterling Kidney Center, it was warm and bright. Maya stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd of doctors, donors, and patients. She wore a simple white dress, looking radiant. In the front row, sitting next to Anthony Sterling, was Lily. Lily looked amazing. Her cheeks were rosy, her hair thick and shiny. She was laughing at something Anthony whispered to her. The transplant had been a total success. She was starting college in the fall. "A year ago," Maya spoke into the microphone, "I had $57 and a dying sister. I thought the world was cold and cruel. I thought that rich men didn't care about poor waitresses." She smiled at Anthony, who dabbed his eyes with a silk handkerchief. "But I learned that character isn't defined by your bank account," Maya continued. "It's defined by what you do when you think no one is watching. It's defined by the muffin you share when you're hungry. It's defined by the door you open when you're tired." She looked at the back of the room. A plaque on the wall read, "Dedicated to the kindness of strangers." We are here today to ensure that no one in Seattle has to choose between rent and life-saving medicine, Maya declared. The center is officially open. The applause was thunderous. Later, as the crowd thinned out, Anthony walked over to Maya. He looked healthier than he had in years. The toxicity of his nephew was gone, replaced by the family he had chosen. "You did good, kid," Anthony said, patting her shoulder. "We did good," Maya corrected him. "How's Julian?" Anthony's face hardened slightly. The judge gave him 5 years for fraud and embezzlement. He's working in the prison laundry. Ben tells me he hates the detergent smell. Maya smiled. "Karma." "Indeed," Anthony said. He pulled a small envelope from his pocket. "One last thing. I stopped by Joe's diner today. Rick, the old manager, he's gone. New management." "Oh?" "I gave the deed to the head chef, the nice one who used to sneak you extra bread." Anthony winked. "But I saved this for you." Maya opened the envelope. Inside was a crisp $20 bill. "What's this?" "I borrowed $12 from you," Anthony grinned. "Consider this the interest." Maya laughed, hugging the old man tight. She looked out the window at the rain. It didn't look like a countdown anymore. It looked like life washing the world clean, ready for a new beginning. Wow, what a journey. From a waitress with tape on her shoes to the head of a massive foundation, Maya proved that kindness really is the most powerful currency in the world. It's crazy to think that one small act, giving a muffin and a glass of water, changed the course of history for everyone in that room. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many times do we walk past someone in need because we're too busy or too broke? And how different would the world look if we acted like Maya, even when we had nothing left to give? I want to know what you think. If you were in Maya's shoes, standing in that hospital parking lot with Julian offering you $50,000 to betray your boss, would you have taken the money? Be honest. Let me know in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a twist. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind. You never know who you're really talking to. See you in the next one.